首先，他想要这2个问题。
These are very important verses.
这是非常非常重要的诗节。
And so we're going to spend a little bit of time with the words of Shukadeva Goswami, appreciating the questions.
所以我们在这里花一点时间来阅读一下，看一看 Shukadeva Goswami 他是用怎样的语言来荣耀了 Parikshit Maharaj 所提出来的问题。
Some of you may have an attraction for Sanskrit.
可能在座的有的人喜欢学梵文。
And in case you do, here's the Sanskrit.
那么，鉴于这种情况，我们在这里呈现了梵文诗节。
You see in the first line the word prashna.
我们在第1行当中看到了 prashna 这个词。
And prashna means question.
Prashna 的意思是提问。
You also see the word vriyan.
你们也在第1行看到了 very young 这个词。
Vriyan means glorious.
Very young 的意思是荣耀。
The question itself is glorious.
这个提问本身是非常光荣荣耀的。
Because it brings benefit to the whole world, lokahitam.
因为这个提问给所有的世人带来裨益 lokahitam。
You see in the third line the word atma vit.
我们在第3行里面看到了这个词 atmavit。
Atmavit means to know who you are.
Atmavit 的意思是了解我们是谁。
Vit or vid means to know.
Vit 或 vid 意思是去了解。
And atmavit is to know the self, to know your true spiritual identity.
Atmavit 的意思是去了解我们自己，去了解我们自己真实的身份。
The word samatak means the essence or the totality of the well-being of an individual is to know who you are.
Samatha 的意思是去了解所有的众生，所有众生的原本。
And learned persons approve of such topics.
而且有学识的人，他们非常的认可这一主题。
And you see in the illustration on the left, there's an ear and there's a heart.
我们在左边的这个插图里可以看到有一个耳朵，还有一颗心。
Here's Shukadeva Goswami's words translated.
Yes, Shukadeva Goswami 的原话是这样说到的：您的提问是荣耀的，因为这对全人类都很有裨益。对这个提问的回答是聆听的主题，并且是所有超然主义者一致认可的。
Now, the rest of Canto 2 looks like this.
我们可以看到第2篇的整个的章节的内容以这种方式呈现出来。
There are 3 main parts.
这第2篇里面有3个主要的部分。
You see them illustrated at the very bottom. Yoga processes, universal form and creation. That's Canto 2.
你们在这个插图里面，这个文字的注明里面可以看到的这3个的主要的部分是瑜伽程序、宇宙形体以及创造。
We're going to begin focus on yoga processes. That's the first 3 chapters of Canto 2.
我们现在开始来专注的讲一讲第2篇前3章的内容，瑜伽程序。
Here's an illustration to show those first 3 chapters.
这个插图向我们表明了这3章里面所讲述的内容。
The first chapter focuses on the universal form. The second chapter focuses on Paramatma meditation. And the third chapter focuses on devotional service.
第一章呢，主要是讲到了这个 宇宙的形体，第2章是讲到了这个第1章是讲到了创造，第2个讲到了宇宙形体，第3章讲到了程序，瑜伽的程序。
Here's a summary of chapter 1.
在这里面，我们来看一看第1章的概述。
Read.
第1章 ，Yes， 关于将死之人的职责 ，Shukadeva Goswami 说，这样的人应该总是唱诵和聆听有关主 Krishna 的讯息。接着，他讲述冥想主的宇宙形体的方法。
From the very first instruction, there's emphasis on hearing and chanting about Krishna.
在一开始，这第1个教导就是我们应该去强调，总是去聆听和唱诵关于主的讯息，主 Krishna 的讯息。
In addition, Shukadev teaches that one should try to develop a personal conception of God.
除此之外 ，Shukadeva Goswami 也强调了一点，一个人也应该去培养对至尊主、对神的人格性的概念。
And it's a very interesting and unique way of describing meditating on the Lord's universal form.
并且他在这里以非常独一、独特的方式来描述了对宇宙形体的冥想。
Now let us remember what the topic is for this evening's class.
我们现在来想一想，我们今天晚上课程的主题是什么？
How to live, how not to live.
该怎么活，不该怎么活。
And we're going to hear Shukadeva Goswami's eloquent answers.
我们现在准备来聆听 Shukadeva Goswami 给出的意味深长的回答。
Shukadev begins describing how not to live.
Shukadeva Goswami 开始描述不该怎么活。
One should not live one's life developing or knowledge of oneself.
一个人不该怎么活呢？他不应该怎么活？首先是他不应该缺乏关于自我的知识的，不应该过这样的生活。
Stated positively, one should inquire about the nature of the Atma or the eternal self.
那我们从正面的角度来说，那也就是说，一个人活着就应该积极的去询问关于 Atma、关于自我的知识。
Stated negatively, it's don't neglect asking about knowledge of who you really are on the spiritual plane.
那也就是反过来说，我们不应该忽视对自我的了解。
Here's the next prohibition.
这里讲到了第2点。
Read.
Yes， 不询问生命的真正问题。
The real problems of life have to do with our entanglement in illusion.
我们生命的真正的问题跟我们束缚在幻想之中是息息相关的。
And if one doesn't inquire about those real problems and the solution to those real problems, one has wasted one's life.
如果一个人不去询问生命的真正的问题，并且不去询问怎么样去解决生命的真正的问题，那么他就是虚度光阴。
If one fails in these two, then there's a failure in number 3.
如果一个人忽略了这前2项，没有去做到前2项的话，那么第3项就接踵而来。
We must place our faith in something.
我们肯定会将我们的信心放在什么事情上。
And if one doesn't know what is eternal, one will place one's faith in the temporary.
如果一个人不去了解什么是永恒长存的，那么一个人就会把自己的信心放在短暂的事物上。
Please read.
Yes， 对容易犯错的士兵充满信心，看不到他们的末日正在逼近。
Now, Prabhupada uses this word fallible soldiers.
使徒帕卡德在要旨当中用了容易犯错的士兵这个短语。
Supposing there's some difficulty in life.
假如我们在生活当中遇到了一些困难或问题，
It's natural to look for some resource to help you to address that difficulty in life.
那么自然而然的，我们就会去寻求某个人帮助我们来解决我们生活上的困难或问题。
However, if one turns to something else that's also temporary and less than perfect, that's what most people do, and those are fallible soldiers, family, friends, relatives, etc.
然而呢，在这个时候，人们通常把他们的注意力放向了这些容易犯错的士兵身上，比如妻儿、家庭等等。这些容易犯错的士兵身上，这些短暂的事物身上，向他们求助。
It's summer season right now.
现在我们是处在夏季，
And many people like to go to the beach.
很多人都喜欢到海边，
And sometimes children will build a sandcastle by the beach.
那么一些孩子在海边玩的时候，他们喜欢用沙子来垒成城堡。
But when the tide comes in, what happens to the sandcastle?
但是，一旦这个浪潮席卷而来，那这个用沙垒成的城堡会怎样呢？
The sandcastle is washed away.
那么，这个用沙子做成的城堡就会被水卷走。
This is a common explanation or comparison. This is a common comparison for persons trying to make a place of happiness in a place that's temporary and miserable.
所以这通常是一个比喻。刚才说到的这个比喻呢，就比喻为通常人们把自己的快乐建立在那些短暂的事物上。
Here's another illustration of fallible soldiers.
这里有另一张插图来说明了这些容易犯错的士兵指的是谁。
Life is sometimes complicated.
生活有的时候是非常复杂的。
Over there on the lower right, that's entering into the maze that's called life.
那么我们在右下方，这里是我们生活的一个入口，可以这样来比喻。
And once you start walking through that maze called life, it gets really complicated.
那么一旦人们进入了这个生活的迷宫，就发现这个生活的迷宫真是复杂。
And one may try to take shelter of some of these fallible soldiers and still be caught in this very complicated maze called life.
然后有些人呢，会在这进入到这个生活的迷宫当中，他们会将自己的信心或者是幸福快乐放在这些短暂易逝、容易犯错的这些士兵上。
Prahlad Maharaj also describes the same complexity.
那么帕拉达玛哈拉吉也同样的描述了这一点。
When he's discussing with his classmates, the little 6-year-old boys,
当帕拉达玛哈拉吉和他同龄人6岁左右的同班同学一起讨论的时候，
he makes a nice comparison of how many years are spent in the course of one's life in wasting time.
那么他以一个非常栩栩如生的一个描述、比喻来罗列了一个人在这一辈子当中是如何来浪费掉了自己的生命的。
Supposing somebody lives for 65 years.
假如一个人他一辈子的寿命是65岁。
Here's a breakdown of how those 65 years are spent.
在这里面，我们可以看到这65年的是怎么分配的。
I think the number should be more for work, especially in China, because people work really hard.
我想在这里的工作的时间可能应该更长一些，因为在中国人们会把相当长的时间放在他们的工作上。
Maybe we'll take a little from the sleep and put it over there in the work.
可能把这个睡眠的时间当中取一部分挪到这个工作的时间分配当中。
And there's a big number of years spent commuting to go to work.
我们在这里可以看到，也花了，其中有很相当的时间花在了通勤上，就是上班的路上。
I think people may spend less time eating than they do commuting.
我想，可能人们在这个一日三餐上花的时间比通勤或者上班的路上花的时间要少点。
But you see at the bottom, discretionary time is very little.
那么我们在这个下面可以看到，关于个人的这种表达啦，或者是交流的时间啊，比较短，不是那么长。
If you step back from the whole picture of life, what's the purpose? What's the mission?
如果大家从这张图片向后撤退一下，来想一想，从这张图片当中我们可以看到生命的使命或者是生命的目标是什么呢？
Those who are attending this class, you're of different stages of life. Some are younger, some are older, some are very old.
在座的听课的奉献者当中，有的人比较年轻，有的人可能到中年了，有的人可能已经到老年了。
It's important that we consider the material aspects of life are quite temporary, and maybe we're not so thoughtful about what the real purpose is.
那么我们可以了解到，物质的生活是如此的短暂易逝，也许我们并没有去深思我们生命的目标到底是什么。
Maybe you don't recognize, but this photograph is a photograph of a mirage in a desert.
也许你们大家还没有看出来，其实这张图片里面的背景是个海市蜃楼的一张图片。
Above the desert is the sky, but there in the distance is a mirage. It looks like water, but it's a desert. There's no water.
我们在这个图片上面可以看到，下边是一片一望无际的沙漠，但是再往上看，可以看到天空呈现出水，但实际上在沙漠里怎么会有水呢？
The appearance of what's important in life and what's really important in life may not match.
可能表面看上去生活非常重要的事情，它跟真正的重要的事情并不是相匹配的。
Shukadeva Goswami is encouraging us to ask the question, what is it that you're living for?
Shukadeva Goswami 在这里激励我们去好好的深思，我们到底为什么而活着。
Sometimes we find ourselves at a fork in the road, and are we going to head towards eternal life or simply head for death?
有的时候，可能我们就像是在人生的十字路口，在想，我们到底是朝着永生这条路走呢，还是朝向死亡这条路走？
So that was on the topic of how not to live.
所以这就是关于我们不该怎么活所讲到的内容。
Now we're going to move to what is the positive things that one should do in life.
现在我们来进入到我们在生活当中应该去积极追求的是什么？
And this is the essence. Put Krishna at the center of your life.
而这里面呈现的精髓，那就是将 Krishna 放在我们的生活的中心，放在我们生活的中心。
Now remember, we're still in chapter 1 of Canto 2.
要了解到，我们现在讲述的内容仍然跟圣典博教法坛第一篇
So the question may arise, how do I keep Krishna at the center of my life?
我们现在仍然是在讲到的是关于圣典博伽法坛第2篇第2章的内容。那么这里面可能会有人提出来一个问题：如何将神放在生活的中心呢？那么如何过以神为中心的生活呢？
Shukadeva Goswami's recommendation is really simple.
Shukadeva Goswami 所给出的忠告建议是非常非常简单的。
Here's a very celebrated verse from Canto 2.
这是圣典博伽法坛第2篇一个非常著名的诗节。
See the last 2 lines. Shrotavya kirtitavyascha smartavyaschaitabayam. That's the essence.
我们在这个诗节的最后的2行，最后的2行就是这个诗节所讲到的精髓。
It refers to the process of hearing, chanting, and remembering.
这最后2行呢，指的是聆听、唱诵和忆练。
That's Bhagavat Dharma, hearing and chanting. Exactly what we're doing right now.
这就是 Bhagavat Dharma 所描述的，也就是大家正在做的聆听和唱诵。
But the topic of hearing and chanting is Bhagavan, Ishvara, Hari.
而聆听和唱诵的主题就是 Bhagavan, Ishvara, Hari.
Here's the translation, read.
Yes, 这是这里的诗节的译文。巴特王的后裔啊，渴望超脱一切痛苦的人，必须聆听、荣耀和忆练人格守神。他是超灵、控制者和解除一切痛苦的救主。
You see, the last word in the Sanskrit is bhayam or abhayam.
大家在这里可以看到，这个诗节的最后一个梵文词是 bhayam 或 abhayam。
So bhayam means fear and abhayam means fearless.
bhayam 的意思是恐惧 ，abhayam 的意思是无所畏惧。
The king is going to die shortly, 7 days.
这个国王很快就会离开身体，在7天之后就离开了。
And he may have fear of death.
也许他对死亡有一种恐惧。
We also may die.
我们可能也会死去。
Not may die, we are sure to die.
我们不是可能会死去，我们肯定会死去。
Maybe you know someone that has some very, very serious illness and it's suffering and they may die in a short period of time.
也许在座的奉献者当中遇到了，在生活当中遇到了有人患了非常严重的疾病，他可能不久即将离开人世，活的时间不多了。
Shukadeva is giving a solution.
Shukadeva Goswami 在这里给出了解决的方案。
And note, we're just on the 5th verse of chapter 1.
我们现在你要知道，我们现在还在圣典博伽法坛第2篇第1章的诗节第1章的内容当中。
Please read.
Yes. 只要思辨者、果报活动者和瑜伽士们摒弃他们的程序，修习 Bhakti， 就连他们也能征达最高的完美境界。
Shukadeva is recommending this hearing, chanting, and remembering process.
Shukadeva Goswami 在此推荐了聆听、唱诵和忆练的程序。
Down at the bottom of this illustration is the hellish planets.
我们在这张插图里面可以看到，对这张插图的最下面指的是地狱。
On the steps, you see the word ignorance.
我们在这个台阶上，我们可以看到，有的台阶上写着愚昧无知。
Below that is the word envy.
在这个愚昧无知的下面写着嫉妒。
And you see those scary-looking guys, that's the Yamadutas, taking the subtle body down to those hellish planets.
我们在这张图的中间可以看到， 有的人他们非常害怕被亚麻都塔的使者拽到地狱当中。
And above that, there's a lady perhaps enticing a young man to come and enjoy.
我们在这张图片的最下边可以看到一个女性，她紧紧地缠绕着一个男子，来邀请他和他一起尽情的享乐。
But look, there's a sadhu who's inviting that same soul to go to the place of higher consciousness, ultimately to the abode of Radha Krishna.
但是我们可以在这张图片上也可以看到，这里有圣人萨度，他们邀请同样的灵魂去把他们带到更高的知觉状态当中，一直到他们回到 Radha Krishna 那里。
And that's the bhakti process.
而这正是 bhakti 程序。
Other processes don't have that same effect.
其他的程序没有像 bhakti 程序这样的效果。
Now comes a very nice question. He's advocating hearing, chanting, and remembering. How are we going to always remember Krishna and not forget Krishna?
我们在这里可以看到 Shukadeva Goswami 强调了聆听、唱诵和忆恋 Krishna。那么接下来可能会有人提出一个非常好的问题：如何总是想着 Krishna？ 如何不去忘记 Krishna 呢？
Here's Shukadeva Goswami's answer. Please read.
Yes, Shukadeva Goswami 对这个问题的回答是这样子的：聚精会神、毕恭毕敬的聆听圣典博伽瓦坛的人，获得对至尊主解脱的赐予者坚定不移的信心。
Full attention.
这里面讲到了聚精会神，
Respect of Srimad Bhagavatam's message.
并且是对圣典博伽瓦坛的讯息要保持毕恭毕敬的态度去聆听。
Unflinching faith.
这里面还说到了要有坚定不移的信心。
We heard these very same words in the 6 questions, 6 answers, if you can recall.
如果大家还记得的话，我们在前面的第一篇里面的6个提问和6个回答当中，也谈到了这相同的问题。
Let me remind you what was said.
我现在来提醒大家，在前面所讲到的。
If you can hear the message of Srimad Bhagavatam with rapt attention, Krishna will appear in every page of Srimad Bhagavatam.
如果我们全神贯注的去聆听圣典博伽瓦坛，聆听关于 Krishna 的讯息，那么 Krishna 就会显现在圣典博伽瓦坛的每页当中。
If you'd like, you can go back and read Canto 1, Chapter 3, the final verse of that chapter.
如果大家感兴趣的话，你们可以再回头去阅读一下圣典博伽瓦坛第一篇 Canto 1, Chapter 3,
The final verse.
Yeah, 圣典博伽瓦坛第一篇第3章最后3个诗节的内容。
And here Shukadeva is saying the same thing.
而在这里 Shukadeva Goswami 又传递了同样的讯息。
This is how to remember Krishna always and not forget him.
这就是如何总是记着 Krishna， 如何总是不忘记 Krishna。
The very next verse, Shukadeva emphasizes the importance of chanting the Mahamantra.
在接下来的诗节当中 Shukadeva Goswami 强调了唱诵 Hare Krishna Maha Mantra 的重要性。
Another celebrated, often quoted verse.
这个诗节也是经常引述的一个著名的诗节。
Please read.
Yes, 王啊，无论是那些脱离了一切物质欲望的人，还是那些欲求所有物质享乐的人，或是那些通过超然知识而自我满足的人，对所有人来说，遵照伟大权威们的方法，恒常不断地唱诵主的圣名，是没有疑惑、无惧无畏的坦途。
This very same sequence is discussed in another celebrated verse in Canto 2.
那么这个诗节 他在这个诗节里非常有迅速的一所描述的内容，在圣典博加瓦坛的第2篇的另一个诗节当中也谈到了。
There are 3 categories of eligible people.
有3类有资格的人。
Some persons are completely infested with all material desires.
有一些人他们是物欲熏心，欲壑难填。
And some are completely free from all material desires.
而有一些人他们完全从物质欲望当中超脱出来了。
And some are filled with transcendental knowledge and are self-satisfied.
而有一些人呢，他们聪明了超然的知识，并且感到满足，自我感到满足。
Srimad Bhagavatam is good for all 3 groups of people.
所以圣典博加瓦坛适合这3类所有的人去阅读。
Now comes a doubt.
那现在有一个疑惑咯。
What about me? I may not have an attraction yet for hearing and chanting and remembering.
那我是怎样的呢？也许我现在还一点点没有受到聆听、唱诵和意念的吸引嘞。
Please read.
Yes， 不是人人都准备好，只是聆听、唱诵和意念的。
Now what about such people?
那这样的人，他们该怎么办呢？
Here's what's recommended.
在这里面，对于这样的人，给出了这样的推荐。
There's a process of Ashtanga Yoga, or the Yoga of 8 limbs.
有阿斯汤嘎瑜伽、8部瑜伽。
And this is described in Canto 2, Chapter 1.
关于这一部分的内容，在圣典博加瓦坛第2篇第1章15到39诗节里面讲到了。
I've attended some yoga studios in China, and they advertise that they're teaching Ashtanga Yoga. I doubt it.
我曾经在国内的时候参加过一些瑜伽馆的活动，然后这些瑜伽馆呢，他们在宣传他们教授的是8部瑜伽。我对此对此表示一些疑惑，一些质疑。
The upper stages of the 8-fold yoga system lead to samadhi, and I don't think they're teaching samadhi.
而这个8部瑜伽的最后的几个阶段，实际上是教人如何进入到 samadhi 的神定当中。
But supposing you're doing Ashtanga Yoga nicely.
假如你非常好的习练8部瑜伽 Ashtanga Yoga.
And then what's the object that you bring the mind to meditate upon in this chapter 1? It's the universal form.
那么在这第2篇第1章这个部分里面所讲到的，通过习练8部瑜伽，最后你会去冥想的对象是什么呢？冥想的对象在这里指出来的，冥想的是宇宙形体。
Supposing that Ashtanga Yoga student in the yoga school in China has some material attachments. Just imagine they have some material attachments.
假如在中国习练 Ashtanga 瑜伽的爱好者们，他们内心有一些物质的欲望。
It's recommended for such a beginner in the Ashtanga Yoga system to meditate on the universal form.
所以呢，对于习练 Ashtanga 瑜伽的初级习练者来说，推荐给他们的习练方法就是去冥想瑜伽形体。
That is what's found in chapter 1.
这是圣典博加瓦坛第2篇第1章里面所讲述的内容。
And chapter 1 ends by saying, as one becomes proficient in this type of meditation, one should meditate on Paramatma.
而在圣典博加瓦坛第2篇第1章末尾的时候说到了，随着一个人在习练 Ashtanga 瑜伽当中不断的取得进步，当他到达高级阶段的时候 ，Ashtanga 瑜伽的高级阶段的时候，他开始去冥想心中的超灵。
And now we're ready for Canto 2, Chapter 2.
现在我们准备进入到圣典博加瓦坛第2篇第2章的内容当中。
You see at the bottom there, that's the Paramatma form.
我们在这张图片里面的最下方可以看到 Paramatma 的形象。
Please read.
Yes， 第2章的概述 Sukadeva Goswami 讲述 Astanga 瑜伽，借此通过这种方式无所依附的瑜伽士冥想心中的超灵。
So in case you want to know what meditation on the Supersoul looks like, you can read chapter 2.
如果您想要去了解一下冥想心中的超灵是什么样的一种境界，您可以去阅读圣典博加瓦坛第2篇第2章的内容。
In 4 verses in chapter 2, there's a very detailed description of the Supersoul.
在圣典博加瓦坛第2篇第2章8到11诗节这4个诗节，非常详细的描述了心中超灵的形象。
Here's what Shukadeva Goswami says about Supersoul.
这里是 Sukadeva Goswami 对超灵的描述，是这样子的。
He's 8 inches tall.
他心中的超灵8英寸高。
Now, he's unlimited and he can be tinier than an atom, but in the heart, since the heart is that size or the size of a fist, that's the size of Supersoul in the heart.
那么当然了，超灵呢，它是可以变小，它是无穷大，也可以又是无穷小的，它也可以变得更小，也可以变得更大。那么在这里面所讲到的，通常超灵的这个大小，心中的超灵的大小是8英寸高。
He has 4 hands.
他有4臂。
His mouth shows an expression of happiness.
他的口表达着快乐。
His eyes are shaped like lotus petals.
他的眼睛的形状就像是莲花瓣一样。
And he has garments that are yellowish like saffron of a kadamba tree.
而且他还穿着着衣袍，他穿着的衣袍的颜色就像是卡当巴花一样的黄色。
And he has spiritual jewels.
而且他身上还佩戴着装饰着珠宝。
Those jewels are gold set with precious stones.
而这些珠宝呢，都是镶嵌着宝石的黄金首饰。
On his head there's a crown and he has earrings that are glowing.
他头上戴着皇冠，他耳朵上戴着耳环，这些皇冠和耳环都闪闪发光。
Those who are mystic yogis experience the feet of Paramatma within their heart.
那些习练神秘瑜伽的神秘主义者们、瑜伽士们，他们会去在内心去体验到他莲花足他心中的超灵的莲花足。
On his chest, there's a Kastuba jewel hanging that's engraved with a beautiful calf.
他的脖子上，超灵的脖子上戴着非常美丽的Kaustuba 宝石，而这个 Kaustuba 宝石上雕刻着一头美丽的小牛犊。
Did you know all those things are part of Paramatma?
你们了解关于 Paramatma 的所有这些特征吗？
He has jewels on his shoulders.
而且他的手臂上也戴着金银首饰。
His torso or waist or chest is garlanded with fresh flowers.
他的这个胸膛上，他的脖子上挂着用鲜花穿成的花环。
And he has an ornamental wreath about his waist.
在他的腰间系着一根装饰着十分美丽的腰带。
He has rings studded with valuable jewels on his fingers.
他的手上的每一根手指戴着戒指，戒指上都镶嵌着珍贵的宝石。
On his legs, there's bangles. His hair is oiled and curling with a bluish tint and a nice smiling face.
他的脚脖上戴着怀铃，他的手腕上戴着手镯，并且他黝黑的黑发是油亮卷曲的，而且他略带蓝黑色的俊美的笑颜，这一切都是如此的赏心悦目。
Those that do this type of meditation find a happiness.
那些在冥想心中超灵的人，他们最终会从这样的冥想当中得到极大的喜乐。
That happiness is sometimes called Shanta Rasa.
而这种快乐有的时候被称为是 Shanta Rasa。
However, most of us, when we take a look in the mirror, we don't see Super Soul.
但是我们大多数人并没有大多数人在镜中并没有看到这样的冥想的状态，而是看到的是自己。
Now, that's a very interesting illustration that would take a whole class to explain the illustration.
这张图片呢是一张非常有意思的图片，我们可以花上整整一节课的时间来对这张图片进行讲解。
But the essence is the body is a machine and Super Soul is not part of that machine. He is transcendental.
这张图片告诉我们的精髓是，我们的这个身体就像是一部机器，超灵也处在这部机器当中，但是超灵它是超然的，它不属于这部机器，不属于这个身体的一部分。
Meditation on Super Soul is to take the mind's attraction for the gross and subtle material bodies and placing it on that which is eternal.
冥想心中的超灵，那就是将我们的心意从对物质的对粗糙的物质的吸引上，把它吸引到对心中超灵的冥想当中，处在一种超然的境界当中。
Please read.
Yes， 冥想是将心意专注于 Vishnu 或 Krishna， 而不是虚无想象的光或者物质对象。
Many people that do meditation don't understand the object of meditation to be a spiritual form and quality.
很多人他们从事冥想，但是呢，他们并不知道冥想的对象是什么，真正要冥想的对象是什么。那么他们不知道什么是有质量的冥想。
But those who study the Bhagavatam understand the object of meditation is fully spiritual, not something void or imagined or material.
但是那些研习圣典博伽瓦坛的人，他们非常的清楚冥想的对象是什么。冥想的对象是完全超然灵性的，而不是某种虚无想象的光，或者是某种物质的对象。
And that's towards the end of chapter 2 of Canto 1.
而这就是描述到这里，讲到这里，我们进入到了圣典博伽瓦坛第2篇第2章的末尾的部分。
Now we're readying ourselves to move to chapter 3.
我们现在准备进入到第2篇第3章的内容。
One is encouraged to transition from Paramatma meditation to meditating upon the Bhagavan feature.
那就是一个人从冥想心中 Paramatma 超灵的这样的境界当中，逐渐的再往上深入到对Bhagavan 的特征的冥想。
And that Vaishnava, pictured on the lower right, is inviting the sadhaka to move towards the staircase of bhakti.
我们在这张图片上可以看到，图片当中的这位 Vaishnava 圣人邀请这个 Sadhaka 习练奉爱瑜伽的习练者去继续往前走，往着这个 Bhakti 的台阶上继续向前迈进。
The very small letters on the side of that staircase says sense control.
那么在这个台阶上，我们可以看到标明了这样的一个词，一句话叫做控制感官。
If you want to move on the process of bhakti, there has to be some exercise and discipline in sense control.
如果我们想要在 Bhakti 奉爱之途的道路上不断的往前行进，那么我们就必须要按照规范原则去做。我们要去不断的习练自己，去控制感官。
Please read.
Yes. 虽然我已经向您描述了其他的冥想途径，对在这物质世界中受苦的人来说，最吉祥的是产生对主纯粹之爱 Prema Sadhana Bhakti 的道路。
Now we're ready for the third chapter.
我们现在准备进入到第3章的内容。
Let's take a look back at Canto 1, Chapter 2.
我们现在再往回去看一看《圣典钵伽瓦坛》第2篇第1章里面的内容，
because it connects with Canto 2, Chapter 2.
因为这个呢是跟这里面呈现的诗节跟《钵伽瓦坛》第2篇第2章第1章里面的内容是息息相关的。
You see in the second line the word bhava. This practice of bhakti is meant to take us to the bhava stage.
大家在这个诗节当中的第2行看到了 bhava 这个字，那么我们习练 sadhana bhakti， 不断的在往上行进，会把我们带入到 bhava 的阶段。
Please read.
Yes， 能使人获得对 Krishna 的爱的超然奉爱服务，由各种感官旅行时，就叫 Sadhana Bhakti， 即规范性奉爱服务。这个奉爱永远存在于众生的心中，唤醒这永恒奉爱的是练习中的奉爱服务的力量所在。
Now, this is not from Srimad Bhagavatam, it's from Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu.
刚才这个诗节，我们可以看到，并不是取自圣典钵伽瓦坛，而是取自 Rupa Goswami 的一部著作 Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu。
And it's describing the sadhana stage.
而这个诗节描述了 sadhana 阶段，规范修行阶段。
The reason for bringing this up is there has to be control of the senses.
之所以引述了这个诗节呢，就是告诉我们在习练 Bhakti 的过程当中，我们要不断的去控制我们的心意。
And the teaching is that Bhakti is already there, it just needs to be awakened.
而这里面的教导说到了 Bhakti 已经在众生的心中，但是需要去被唤醒。
And sadhana bhakti is that process of awakening love for Krishna.
而 Sadhana Bhakti 规范性奉爱服务呢，正是唤醒心中的奉爱，对 Krishna 的爱的方法。
Devotion is already there, it just needs to be awakened by the sadhana process.
奉爱已经在那里，已经在众生的心中，但是呢，需要被唤醒。通过什么被唤醒呢？通过 Sadhana Bhakti 被得以唤醒。
Now here's a nice illustration showing the sadhaka on the left and Krishna on the right.
这是一张非常美丽的图片，在左边是 Sadhaka 习练者，奉爱瑜伽的习练者，右边是 Krishna。
Here are two main benefits from following sadhana bhakti.
我们奉行 Sadhana Bhakti 会给我们带来2大益处。
Please read.
Yes， 第一个，净化受污染的生命目标；第二个，获得主的莲花足。
So impurities are removed and the pure lotus feet of the Lord are achieved.
我们内心的污染不洁被去除掉了，
And now
主的莲花足向我们揭示了。
we're moving into chapter 3, as you see in the lower right of the illustration.
我们现在进入到第3章的内容，正如这张图片的下面的这个莲花瓣所表明的。
Please read.
Yes. 第3章的概述 Sukadeva 讲述崇拜半神人之道，并且忠告人人都该崇拜 Krishna， 无论他物以虚心还是无所欲求。
So let us now explore.
我们现在来进行探索第3章的内容。
Here's another celebrated verse from chapter 3 of Canto 2.
这是圣典博加瓦坛第2篇第3章里面非常著名的一个诗节。
This is that verse where there's these same 3 categories of eligible persons.
这个诗节里面同样的讲到了3类有资格习练 Bhakti 的人，3类人。
Please look at the first line.
我们大家来看一看这个诗节的第1行。
We see akama and sarvakama, that's all desire and no material desire.
我们看到了 Akama 和 Sarvakama。Akama 的意思是无欲无求，没有任何物质的欲望。Sarvakama 的意思是充满各种各样的物质欲望。
And the second line is mokshakama, those that want liberation.
那第2行说到了 Mokshakama， 那就是指的是那些渴望获得解脱的人。
And then comes udara D, those who have broader intelligence.
在这里第2行里面说到了 Udara D。Udara D 的意思是那些有睿智的人，非常有智慧的人。
The advice of Shukadev is not only bhakti yoga, but tivra bhakti, very strongly determined devotional service.
在这里面 Sukadeva Goswami 不仅仅提出了 Bhakti， 而且是 Tivrena Bhakti， 那就是要非常强烈的、非常稳健的 Bhakti。
And who should be the object of that devotional service? Purusham Param, the Supreme Person.
而我们应该奉献于谁呢？我们应该奉献的对象是 Purusham Param， 至尊人格守神。
Read.
Yes， 有高度智慧的人，无论内心充满各种物质欲望，或无欲无求，还是渴求解脱，都必须千方百计崇拜至尊的整体人格守神。
Now let us remember these 3 questions, how to leave.
我们现在来想一想这些提出来的问题，里面有一个问题是如何离开身体。
This is answered in chapter 3.
关于如何离开身体这个提问的回答，在博加瓦坛第2篇第3章里面回答了。
Here's the verse.
这个诗节是这样子的。
Please read.
Yes， 太阳日升日落，减少众生的寿命，唯有利用时间谈论至善的人格守神的人，不受其影响。
When you discuss topics of Krishna, like we're doing right now, the closer you are to eternal life and the further you are from simply absorption in the temporary.
如果我们大家在一起谈论关于 Krishna 至尊人格守神的信息，就像我们现在这样做的，那么我们就会越离着永恒的存在越来越近，我们就会越来越远离我们短暂的事物，我们就会越来越远离对短暂事物的吸引。
The same idea in reverse is in chapter 1, what not to do.
那么在圣典博加瓦坛第2篇第1章里面，就刚好说到了与这个诗节相对应的、反过来说的一个诗节。
Read.
Yes， 在世多年却不变得成熟，如此虚度光阴的长寿有何价值呢？不如幡然醒悟，充盈知觉的一瞬间，因为那使人开始寻求一己最高的福祉。
Shukadeva Goswami gives the example of a great king named Katvanga. Please read.
Shukadeva Goswami 在此给出了一个非常好的例子 ，Katvanga 国王的例子。Shukadeva Goswami 是这样说到的：圣王 Katvanga 在被告知其寿命只剩下片刻，便立即从一切物质活动中抽离出来，托庇于最为安全的庇护——人格守神。
Now we know how to live, how not to live, and how to leave.
我们现在已经知道了应该如何去生活，不该怎么活。我们现在已经知道了不该怎么活，应该怎么活，以及如何离开身体。
The sages ask the next question: What was the further topics discussed by Maharaj Parikshit and the king and Shukadeva?
Yeah. 然后这个圣人们又询问了这样的接下来的一个问题 Parikshit Maharaj 向 Shukadeva Goswami 又进一步的询问了什么样的问题呢？
Now we're ready for the next 4 chapters of Canto 2.
我们现在准备圣典博迦瓦坛，进入到圣典博迦瓦坛第4章内容。
Over there on the far right is chapter 7, that's Incarnations of the Lord.
我们在这里面可以看到，在右边罗列了至尊人格守神的各种各样的化身。
And over on the left is chapter 4.
在这张图片的最左边的这个莲花瓣讲的是第4章的内容。
Let's see what's in chapter 4.
我们现在来看一看第4章的概述。第4章 Parikshit 王询问有关创造的事宜， Shukadeva Goswami 祈祷至尊主赐予他力量，以讲述主进行创造的逍遥时光。
Now, if you were about to die and you had a perfectly realized soul, are you going to ask about creation?
假如你现在即将离开躯体，并且呢，你是一个完美的灵魂，你会去询问关于创造的事情吗？
If you're an elevated person like Maharaj Parikshit, that's the question you ask.
如果你真的就像是 Parikshit Maharaj 这样崇高的人物的话，也许你会去问到这样的问题。
Very interesting. We find the very same question coming in Canto 3 when Vidura meets Maitreya.
那么我们非常有意思的是，在第3章里面，当 Maitreya 当 Vidura 遇到 Maitreya 的时候，他向 Maitreya 询问了这相同的问题，关于创造的问题。
That's very interesting, isn't it?
这是非常有意思，难道不是的吗？
There must be a reason.
肯定是有原因。他们为什么提出这样的问题，肯定是有原因的。
The reason is it's important to understand that everything around us, that's the creation, has its source of emanation, and that's Krishna.
这个非常有意思的一点的关键所在就是，我们置身于的这个创造，它的创造最终是被毁灭的，而且这个创造是有它的源头的，它的源头就是至尊主。
So you already read this, right?
你们已经读到了这一点，是吧？
Yes, the answer is yes. You read it?
问题你们的回答是已经读过了，是吧？
I'm asking you a question. Did you read all this? This text?
你们大家
Surabhi, don't translate.
Oh yeah, yes. Yeah, I already read this.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Here is Shukadeva Goswami's appreciation, both the merit of this question, and he's praying to Krishna for the power to speak properly.
在这里 里面 Shukadeva Goswami 他首先的荣耀了这个问题，给众人给世人带来极大的福祉，并且他也祈祷向至尊主祈祷，给予他力量去讲述关于创造的事宜。
Please read. Let me offer.
Oh yes， 让我向什么什么质疑我前进的顶拜。
Read.
Yes， 全面吉祥的圣主 Krishna 关于他的荣耀、记忆、讲授。
Notice Krishna is in the page of the Bhagavatam.
我们在这里可以注意到 ，Krishna 就存在于圣典博伽瓦坛的每一页当中。
He's in the spiritual sky, and he's in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam.
Krishna 既存在于圣典博伽瓦坛的每一页当中，与此同时，它也存在于灵性天空当中。祈祷。 聆听和崇拜。这一切能够立刻去除执行者所有罪恶的影响。
And that's the end of this evening's class. We just completed chapter 4.
这就结束了我们今天晚课的主题的讲解，那也就是我们也把第4章的内容串读了一遍。
And we're ready for the next session, which is shown here.
我们下一节课的时候会来准备进入到下一个部分，下一部分就是第4串流 Narada、Brahma 和4个种子师节。
Isn't this a nice way to appreciate the structure and flow of Srimad Bhagavatam?
我们通过这种方式来去荣耀圣典博伽瓦坛的每一个部分，就像是波浪的这个流动的波浪一样，一串一串的。以这种方式呈现圣典博伽瓦坛，难道不美好吗？
We now have 20 minutes for questions.
我们现在还有20分钟的提问的时间。Yes, Gurmaharaj, already some question in the chat box.
Okay.
第一个问题 ，Das 有 Krishna Prema 的说法，有没有 Vishnu Prema 的说法？奉爱的甘露当中提到了3种 Bhakti：Sadhana Bhakti、Bhava Bhakti、Prema Bhakti。问题，这不是渐进的程序吧？换言之，通过 Sadhana Bhakti 就可以变得纯粹，是吗？The first question from Das. There is such verse Krishna Prema. So is there any verse Vishnu Prema? Vishnu Prema? This phrase? And in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it mentioned the 3 kinds of bhakti: Sadhana Bhakti, Bhava Bhakti, and Prema Bhakti. This is is it a gradual process? That means by practicing Sadhana Bhakti, we can become pure. Can I understand in this way?
You can understand any way you like, but Rupa Goswami makes reference of Krishna Prema because he's a Krishna Bhakta.
Rupa Goswami 他用了 Krishna Prema， 一个是因为他是 Krishna Bhakta， 他是 Krishna 的奉献者。
Now, supposing you're Prahlad Maharaj.
假如您是 Prahlad Maharaj，
He's in a Shringa Bhakta.
Prahlad Maharaj 是Nisimha Bhakta， 是主Nisimha的奉献者。
Supposing you're Dhruva Maharaj.
假如您是 Dhruva Maharaj，
and he's a Vishnu Bhakta.
Dhruva Maharaj 是 Vishnu Bhakta。
But Rupa Goswami uses Krishna prema because he's a Krishna bhakta.
Rupa Goswami 用 Krishna Prema 这个短语，是因为 Rupa Goswami 是 Krishna 的奉献者 ，Krishna Bhakta。
It's the same principles of sadhana apply to all three.
那么 sadhana 的这个sadhana 的原则呢，是适用于这三类的。
And I don't know if I've answered all the questions that she had in her chat box.
我不知
Did I cover everything? Surabhi, don't translate. Did I cover everything?
Oh, yeah. So the second question that sadhana bhakti, bhava bhakti, and prema bhakti is a progress, is a gradual process.
Yes.
是的 sadhana bhakti, bhava bhakti, prema bhakti 这是渐进的程序。So and then he continued the question that by practicing sadhana bhakti, all of us can become pure.
Yes.
是的，我们通过习练 sadhana bhakti 可以变得纯粹，是这样子的。
I'd like to make one comment.
但是我与此同时呢，我也想讲一讲这个评述。
The comment is Krishna can bestow perfection on anybody he likes, and that's unusual. But he can break all the usuals and do what he likes.
哦，呀，那么 Krishna 他可以就是把这个完美的境界赐予任何一个人。通常 Krishna 他想赐予一个人完美，他就可以把完美的境界赐予哪一个人。
A simple example is Putana.
比如像 Putana。
She didn't do sadhana bhakti.
Putana 事先可没有从事过 sadhana bhakti，
And her elevation wasn't gradual.
而这个提升的程序，而它的提升的程序也不是循序渐进的被得以提升的。
Nonetheless, Krishna bestowed eternal association in the spiritual world with him.
然而，尽管如此 ，Krishna 仍然把在灵性世界当中永恒的地位赐予给了 Putana。
So there are exceptions if Krishna wants, but what she says is the standard or the rule.
啊，那么 Krishna，yeah. Guru Maharaj, could you repeat
Sure.
this part?
Yeah.
Yes.
What this question said is the standard or the rule, but Krishna can make exceptions also.
Yes. 那么你在这里呈现出来的这个是 Bhakti 的一般的标准，我们习练的标准。但是呢 ，Krishna 他赐予将完美的境界赐予给谁，也有这个例外的情况发生。
Next.
Yes. Next question from Jambavati. Jambavati Mataji. 顶拜 Guru Maharaj， 请问八部瑜伽修行者没有直接为 Krishna 做服务，他是通过什么程序使内心净化，达到更高阶段的呢？ Offer my obeisance to Guru Maharaj. So my question relates to the practitioner who practice Ashtanga Yoga. So the person who practice Ashtanga Yoga, they do not directly perform devotional service to Lord Krishna. So through what kind of process their heart are purified and then advance to a higher level.
The advancement at the higher level is dependent upon association with devotees.
他通过什么样的程序使内心得到净化，达到更高的阶段，那就取决于他是否跟那些从事奉爱服务的那些精进的奉献者们联谊接触。
Without association of devotees, they won't advance to a further stage.
如果像八部习练八部瑜伽的习练者们，他们如果没有和奉献者修习奉爱瑜伽的奉献者去联谊的话，他们是无法再继续往上提升的，前进到更高的阶段。
The purification takes place because their object of meditation is pure. That's Paramatma. He's pure.
他们习练阿斯汤嘎瑜伽，内心也会得到这样净化，因为他们通过习练阿斯汤嘎瑜伽，最终会冥想心中的超灵，而超灵是至纯至粹的冥想的对象。
Next.
Oh, Maharaj, so far no more question. So maybe 请问奉献者们，大家还有没有其他的问题 ？Okay, yeah. Raja Mataji asked one more question. 您刚才提到了真正有智慧的人，真正有智慧的人是什么样子 ？So, you mentioned there are some people who have a real intelligence or very intelligent, a really very intelligent person. So the real intelligence, what that means or refers to, or what it look like?
Well, the word, the adjective is not real. The adjective is broad. Udara means broad or wide or all-encompassing.
那么刚才这个世界当中所用到的那个词呢是 udara， 就是有高度智慧的人，并不是精确的翻译是有高度智慧的人，而不是这里说到的真正有智慧的人。
And that kind of intelligence is noted by being able to direct the mind to Krishna.
而这种高度的智慧呢，是将一个人逐渐的引向 Krishna 的莲花足，向这个方向引进。
Let's take the example of chanting japa.
我们现在来举个例子，举例来说，我们念诵持珠念诵加塔。
There is distracted japa, and there is absorbed japa.
有分心，就是念诵的时候分心念诵，也有专注的念诵。
The absorbed japa takes place when the mind is situated in the mantra.
当心意完全稳定在曼陀罗上的时候，那么就能够做到专注的念诵。
And when the mantra is situated in the mind.
当曼陀罗稳定的处在心意当中，心意稳定的处在曼陀罗当中，就能够做到专注的念诵。
A symptom of broader intelligence is it directs the mind in that way, and it doesn't move. The mind doesn't move because of spiritual intelligence or broad intelligence.
因为有高度的智慧，或者是有高度灵性的智慧，那么这种高度灵性的智慧是将人的心意引向曼陀罗，或者是引向至尊主，让这个心意通过冥想至尊主，冥想这个曼陀罗而变得非常的稳定，这就是高度智慧或者是灵性智慧的征兆。
Tomorrow morning, when you sit down to chant your japa, see where your mind goes.
当明天早上持珠清晨你持珠念诵的时候，看一看心意处在一种什么样的状态。
And if your mind is situated in the mantra, and the mantra is situated in your mind, that's the symptom that you have that spiritual intelligence operating in your life.
如果你在念诵的时候，心意稳定的处在曼陀罗中，而曼陀罗也稳定的处在心意当中，那么这就说明你具有这种高度的智慧，灵性的智慧。正是这灵性的智慧，使你到达这样的境界当中。
And the same applies to when you're cooking, or when you're singing, or when you're living your life. Your mind is situated in the mantra, or your mind is situated with Krishna, and Krishna is in your mind.
同样的，这个原则也适用于我们生活的方方面面。无论我们在做饭，我们在工作，在生活，日常生活当中，如果我们的心意完全处在曼陀罗当中，我们的心意完全专注在 Krishna 当中，那么 Krishna 就会跟我们在一起，他也会。
And that's an explanation of the properly situated intelligence gives direction to the mind.
这就是我们应该，这就是这个具有高度智慧，或者是恰当的、稳定的处在正确的位置上，在的时候，这个高度的智慧能够将心意导向这样的完美的境界。
Supposing you're not there yet.
假如你还没有到达这种完美的境界当中。
Awakened intelligence is one continues to strive for that purpose or intention.
而一个正在苏醒过来的这种智慧，那就是不断的会做出各种努力的朝着这个方向迈进。
And that's the preliminary stage to the mature stage.
而这正是我们的初级阶段行进到最高级阶段的一个过程。
And study of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and our devotional texts are ways to strengthen that intelligence. That's what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita.
正如 Krishna 在《薄伽梵歌》里面说到了，我们全神贯注的去研习像《薄伽梵歌》《薄伽瓦坛》这样的灵性的经典，就能够去增加我们灵性的智慧。
One who studies this sacred conversation is worshiping me with his intelligence.
Krishna 在《薄伽梵歌》里面说到了，谁去研习我们俩之间的神圣的对话，他就是在通过智性或智慧崇拜我。
That's a symptom of spiritual intelligence or udaradi.
这就是 udaradi 具有灵性智慧的征兆。
Next.
Yes, no, so far. No more question.
Okay.
请问大家还有没有其他的问题？如果有其他的问题，可以发到这个聊天室，或者是打开麦。Oh yeah, Janaka Prabhu asked a question. 我顶拜 Guru Maharaj， 请问 Parikshit 为什么要断食断水等待死亡呢？ I offer my obeisance to Guru Maharaj. My question that why did Parikshit Maharaj fast even without drinking water, without taking any food, and wait for death?
His question is, why did he do that?
Yeah, why did Parikshit Maharaj wait for death by fasting?
Hare Krishna， 我这个问题没有写完，因为没有时间。
对，呀，那您说吧。He didn't complete his question yet.
Okay, say the whole thing. You can just say it in Chinese, and then you can translate in English.
Yes. 那Janaka Prabhu，那您说中文吧，然后你把后面的
因为普通人如果断食断水7天的话，恐怕也有不少人会死亡。所以 Parikshit Maharaj 他为什么要去断食断水呢？他本来知道自己7天会死，是吧？如果不断食断水，去聆听这个圣典波伽瓦坛啊，或者是什么，就是当然为了这个安排这样的一个逍遥时光啊，当然，是不是身体会更好一些呢？还有另外一个，
你稍微等一下好吧？你的这两个问题是连在一起的还是分开问的？
对，连在一起的。
哦，好的。
我们可能会，因为我们大脑迟钝了，我们会另外想。如果他不断食断水，说不定还不会死呢。因为你断食断水，那个正常人也会死啊。
Yeah. So Guru Maharaj, he said that as a common person, usually if one person continuously fasts 7 days without taking any food or drinking any water, so then in such a situation, a common people will die.
Yes.
And Parikshit Maharaj was cursed to die in 7 days. So at that time, he listened Srimad Bhagavatam from Shukadeva Goswami. At the same time, he also fast without taking any food, water. So if maybe some people will think in this way, if a person Maharaj take food, took food and drank water, maybe she would not die in 7 days. So why listening to Srimad Bhagavatam at the same time fasting? Why he listened to the Srimad Bhagavatam and took the food?
Interesting question.
这是一个非常有意思的问题，
Very creative question.
也是一个非常有创造力的问题。
There's 2 answers.
有2个回答。
During the time of Maharaj Parikshit, it was not uncommon that elevated persons could manage their bodily functions without eating and drinking water because they were accustomed to austerities. It was part of their practice and their lifestyle.
那么一个问题的回答就是在 Parikshit Maharaj 他显现的那个年代当中，人们他们做这种苦行已经是习以为常的事情了，所以呢，他们即便是戒食不吃不喝，他们也能够去管理好他们的身体的各种功能。
That means there was something else that was sustaining their life besides food and water.
那也就是说，在他们的生命当中，除了这些进食物之外，他们也有维系他们生命的其他的一些途径。
A very nice example of this is Raghunath Das Goswami.
比如像 Raghunath Das Goswami 就是这方面的一个典型的例子。
Janaka, consider every alternate day he would have a palmful of buttermilk and that was it.
但 Janaka Prabhu 你要想一想，就是他每天就喝那么一丁点儿脱脂的牛奶。
He lived a long life, much longer than 7 days.
但是呢，他活的时间完全超过了7天，是吧？他活得更长。
But Prabhupada explained he was very lean and thin. His body was trembling because he ate so little.
但是帕帕也这样描述了，实际上那个时候 Raghunath Das Goswami 他已经是骨瘦嶙峋了，而且身体总是在颤抖，因为他吃的特别少。
But his body was being sustained by spiritual energy.
但是他的身体仍然被得以维系，是通过灵性的能量被得以维系了。
Maharaj Parikshit wasn't just an ascetic, he was bhakta.
Maharaj Parikshit 他那个时候并没有患病，他是一位 bhakta， 他是 Krishna 的一位奉献者。
And his departure wasn't caused by fasting and not taking water. His departure was caused by a curse of a Brahmin.
而且他离开身体的原因，并不是因为他戒食没喝水、不吃不喝戒食致死的，而是他的死亡是由于那个诅咒导致的。
The curse of the Brahmin would have happened anyway, even if for 7 days and 7 nights he just ate and drank water.
但因为这个婆罗门孩子他所发现的这个诅咒，即便是当时他又吃又喝，他仍然也会在那个时候会死亡的，因为这个诅咒的原因。
But again, my compliments for a very creative question.
这 这是我对这个非常有创造力的问题的一个回答。
Sometimes devotees ask most amazing questions that I don't really understand where the question is coming from, but that's okay.
我在此呢，我来有一个小小的评述哈。有的时候，奉献者问了一些非常有意思、非常令人惊讶的一些问题，我也不知道这些问题是他们从哪儿问出来的。但是呢，有一些问题的确是问的挺令人惊讶，或者是很有意思。
I'm looking at my clock.
我现在看了看我的表。
And the 9 o'clock bell rang 2 minutes ago.
现在已经9:02了。
So we're going to end the class now.
我们现在就结束我们的课程，就讲到这里。
We'll see you again Thursday morning.
我们在星期四早上再见。
And tell your friends it's going to be a nice class.
告诉一下你们的朋友，星期四早上是一个非常精彩的内容的讲课。
We're going
有精彩内容的讲课。
We're going right into Krishna's pastimes in Mathura.
在星期四早上的课程当中，我们会进入到 Krishna 在 Mathura 的逍遥时光当中。
Stay tuned.
所以呢，大家一定不见不散。好。
Tell your friends.
也告诉你的朋友们。
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Ki jai. Thank you very much, Guru Maharaj. 非常感谢 Guru Maharaj 给我们带来精彩的讲解和问题的回答，也非常感谢奉献者们专注的聆听以及提出美好的问题，也非常感谢主持人的美好的服务。Hare Krishna. 大家晚安。
Thank you. What? Wednesday evening here is Thursday morning there. Whatever. Their morning class goes 7 a.m.